Well, Paradox has come in with quite the surprise for us all. See, usually I wouldn't even look at the DLCs released around this time of year since they are just a bundle of focus trees, but if you look closely at this one, we actually have some interesting new mechanics. And they're also paying me to show it off, so how could I say no? But for real though, I actually have some cool things to show off in this video. Remember, as you watch, if you want to buy Thunder at our gates or Expansion Pass 2 as a whole, to get it through my link down below, since it will support my channel by giving me a small cut of your purchase and you still get a Steam key. You know, as this area filled up with new countries with focus trees over the past 10 years, I'd wonder what they do when they ran out of space, and now we have the answer. We got region filters to find interesting countries, but since Thunder at Our Gates adds new focus trees for Siam, the Dutch East Indies, and Australia, we're gonna be picking Australia first here. I'm gonna make the brave choice to turn off historical AI and brace for some crazy stuff to happen this campaign. Alright, so starting off as Australia, we got a few problems to deal with at the start, but could be worse. Got a sizable focus tree here. In the center, we got the democratic paths with many focuses being unlocked by certain election results. I'm sure this is going to be seen in future reworks of the US and UK. Now, to the left, Paradox put the fascist path, where we are fascist but still chill with Britain and build our empire out of the Commonwealth, or we just straight up join Germany. Meanwhile, to the right, we have the communist path, where you kick the Brits to the curb and liberate the oppressed workers all around you. Since it's been a while since I've done a communist playthrough, that's what we're gonna do today. We liberate the workers here and spread the revolution across the world. As I set up the research, I see under the support weapon tech a new type of company, which reminds me that Paradox has kinda changed up the division designer in this update. We got a makeover here with the most important info about a division being put right in front of you. Support companies move to the other side, and the addition of regimental support companies. Think of them like mini brigades you can add to your division to give them extra power that you unlock when you put at least 3 brigades in a single column. The best change with this makeover is the addition of a few hotkeys so you can design templates faster. One last thing I want to explain before I pause are army HQs. So when you create an army and assign a general, you have the option to deploy an army HQ, which will make your general an actual unit on the map, but not a very good one, so you don't want that unit to get in combat, because if it gets into combat, it risks your general getting captured by the enemy. So why would you want to risk your general doing this? Well, you need to deploy your general to use command abilities now, plus they give nearby divisions extra buffs depending on how you've designed that army HQ. So yeah, if you need that extra oomph to make a push or hold the line, you probably want to deploy your general, even if the risk is you can lose them. There is one exception though. Country leaders who are also commanders can't be captured, since that could, completely break a country's focus tree. So once I do the focus against war and fascism, I begin the path to liberate the workers of Australia. I'm on a timer to do this peacefully. I need to get a majority communist support within 717 days without tanking the country's stability below 40%. London, of course, ain't gonna be happy with this. So they're gonna try to counter the rise of communism. To overcome that foreign pressure, I need to put together a team of political advisors that would blast the workers of this nation with Marxist thought. As more workers become aware of their oppression, we empower them to take direct action with strikes. With each strike, we can push for a new industry focus in Australia that makes the country stronger, and as the transformation of Australia continues, I get a spirit that allows me to help my comrades in need in Spain. Unfortunately, I can't deploy an army HQ here since I'm at the volunteer cap for divisions, but the Spanish AI do deploy some, so y'all can see what it looks like and see what units the general is directly affecting. As we fight fascism in Spain, Stalin is popping off with his foreign policy, ending the Italian invasion of Ethiopia and taking the Ethiopians under his wing, while also sponsoring workers' revolutions across the Baltics. But anyways, since I'm aware of what a deployed general unit looks like, when I see one of those units walking by the front line, I know I gotta try to snipe him. I launch an attack towards Badajoz to search for that general, and very quickly I ran into the guy. Like I said before, those HQ units do not do well in direct combat. I don't capture the general myself though, since I'm just a volunteer. The general is captured by the host nation, as you can see here. And in case you're wondering, you can rescue captured generals. Nationalist Spain has the option to save their guy here by planning a raid with one of their divisions. I continued the good fight in Spain. I cleaned up the reactionaries and traitors in the country, and finally, in October 1937, I built up the communist support at home to push for one last strike to change the government, with not much time to spare too. After that focus finishes, it's a new year and a new nation. Mass strikes across the country collapsed the Australian government, and the Communist Party picks up the crown out of the gutter to take control of the nation. Now Jack Miles is here, taking the reins to turn us into a big deal. Did not know they changed this until I stumbled on the screen, but looks like Special Forces Doctrine has been updated to the same mastery system as the rest of the doctrines. Unfortunately, I can't say much about this since in the version I played, the mastery gain was painfully low, but after everyone complained, they did update it to decent levels for you guys. Now we get to the meat of the communist tree. We need to further our industrial growth with a nationalization program and say our goodbyes to London. I will say though, I can't help but laugh at the irony of Australia having the gall to say, "See you around, colonizer," like, whatever bro. Also, Paradox is really funny, making all these nationalization focuses 70 days. I'm just being honest, I'm not sitting here for the next 2 in-game years doing this. I'm focused auto-completing it so I can actually do the fun focuses with non-trash industry. I spend spring cleaning up the remains of the reactionary scum in Spain, and on June 13th, the Civil War is over. The workers' revolution has spread through every corner of Spain, and its safety is guaranteed by our friends in Moscow. You can stack quite a lot of weekly manpower as Australia with this new tree. The ideological loyalty spirit plus a few of these focuses in the manpower tree, and you're already getting yourself nearly 1,000 men a week. And I'm gonna need it because soon I dump those inbred monarchs in London and go my own way, making a faction. Very creatively called the Commonwealth. We don't believe in copyright here, so it's not like they can sue us. Now, although we appreciate what Jack Miles has done for us so far, he's not exactly the guy we need to lead us to take down capitalism for good. For that task, we're gonna need our boy Red Fred. I mean, his name literally rhymes. How can he do us wrong? His first order of business is exporting our revolution to our neighbors and converting our former friends to our side. As we work on that, there's some trouble in Europe. Austro-Hungary is trying to make a comeback, but Germany is not about bringing back the Central Powers. I see the Austrians are fighting just as well as they did in the first war, so I don't expect much from them here. But before they even finish off the Austrians, the Germans escalate things even further. See, this is the type of greed they warn about in the Bible, and now Germany is in a two-front war facing their former allies who are being led by France. Not the only one who thought Hitler was getting super greedy here, but sadly, they ate shit. It was actually looking like a stalemate for a good while until Germany got some help. Italy and a fascist Belgium joined soon, and poor France did not have it in them to fight that wide of a front alone. Within a few weeks, France tapped out. The Axis is genuinely looking pretty scary right now. We got a mega Germany here who's now taken over most of France's colonial empire. That is a problem for me to deal with later though. For now, I continue the mission of exporting the revolution, starting off with New Zealand and British Malaya. Germany continues its conquest by invading Poland. Damn, not even being fascist saved them. These first two uprisings were super easy to deal with since there was no opposition, but when I got to Burma, that's when problems were starting. First, they actually fought back for a change. Second, our rebellion started where there is no supply, so I was struggling for a while. We fought the entire summer, and finally, in the middle of September, we captured Rangoon, ending the civil war. Or at least I thought it should. I think Burma being in a war kind of broke things, so unfortunately, I'm not able to get them in my faction, and they're kind of stuck in purgatory. And the worst part of this is my volunteers there are also stuck. Paradox has been made aware of this issue, so hopefully that's also fixed for y'all. I'll just have to let it play out. Checking in on Europe again, and the Germans have appeared to just keep marching east into the Soviets. Meanwhile, fascist Romania has taken the curious decision to fight against the Germans here. I'm not going to question the Romanian foreign policy too much, but this is kind of funny. At least the Germans are fighting a war on two fronts here since Spain is assisting the Soviets. As I should have expected in ahistorical mode, the diplomacy gets more and more messy. The Chinese United Front is disbanded, with most of the Chinese states joining the Allies, while Communist China joins the Comintern. It may not seem that bad, but just you wait, this is going to cause a lot of problems later. I risk more divisions helping my communist rebels in Indonesia. There are a lot of resources here I wanted in my sphere, so I thought it was worth the risk. I quickly secured the island of Java, but the reactionaries had a strong presence on Sumatra, and despite my superior troops and numbers, they were able to continue stalling me on this strait crossing. They are actually experts in wasting my time here. It feels like I'm in purgatory, or as we call it in America, the DMV. I'm trying to pop another revolt in the Philippines, but the current Japanese invasion looks like it might cause a few problems. Back in Europe, there are some very concerning updates. I guess I shouldn't be surprised the Soviets are struggling against a supercharged Germany, but after sending some officers to get a closer look, I still see the Red Army has a lot of fight left in it. Despite everything, they're making the Germans work hard for their gains. As I worried, the Japanese overrunning the Philippines smothered the potential for a workers' uprising. With only one state left, the Civil War can't fire, so it's a wash. It took way too long to break the stalemate by Jakarta. I had to convert my volunteers to Marines, build bombers, and deploy a frontline commander to finally make my first advance in 9 months. But once I had that beachhead though, it was wraps for the reactionaries on Sumatra. Very quickly, I overran their capital on Palembang, and they completely withdrew from the island. Unfortunately, this civil war had the purgatory bug too, but I figured I could get my volunteers back home by getting involved in World War II. I mean, looking at the Soviets, they need all the help they can get, so I joined the Comintern. When I joined the war, the volunteers did return home as I expected, and I felt confident in my chances to shut down Germany. I've built a large army, and although my manpower seems a bit low, I've pushed up my weekly gain to 1,100 men a week, so I just need to stay out of heavy combat and pick my battles, and I don't even have to go up my conscription law for a while. My plan to help Soviets was to start a third front in Italy and despite my past disagreements with the UK, they were willing to allow me to base my troops in Egypt. When my troops arrived, I was planning on helping the Brits clean up Libya a bit first before moving on to the Italian mainland. But little did I know, the situation was about to change drastically. I clicked on the Soviets to see the situation, and honestly, without thinking too much, I just clicked the Join Wars button so I could be able to help out on all their fronts. But if I just paid attention to the UI for a few extra seconds, I'd have noticed a big elephant on this screen. I have now joined the Soviets in an even greater war against all the allies. My army that was stationed in Europe was sent through an Agarthan portal to take me back to Canberra. Meanwhile, the destroyer fleet that I had in the Mediterranean to escort future naval invasions just got wiped out by the British fleet. The war screen is just a mess at this point. The three main factions are now all at war with each other. We're practically in a free-for-all lobby. But why are we even at war with the Allies in the first place, you may wonder? Well, apparently, when the Soviets were getting ready to invade Iran for, I presume, Operation Countenance related reasons, Churchill was like, oh, you want to save your southern flank from Axis influence and get Allied Lend-Lease easier? Not on my watch, buddy. And I guess Stalin thought this was some type of British joke he didn't get, but turns out he was dead serious. And now the whole anti-fascist coalition has fallen apart. Since my army was back home, I first focused on the fronts near me. I fought to secure the rest of Borneo, along with taking the vital city of Singapore. Borneo folded pretty easily, but Singapore put up a hell of a fight. But my fight around Malaysia wasn't done with the fall of the city. To the north, there was an Axis-aligned Siam that needed to be dealt with as well. However, even with their great defensive position, they couldn't really put up much of a fight against me. Surprisingly, the European Axis managed to slip some divisions over here, but even with Italian and German support, the Siamese were eventually defeated in November. Now, as much as I wish I could have been done with this region and moved on after that, there was quite a few stragglers in the area, not only in the Axis, but in the Allies as well. Over the winter, I'd have to clean up pockets of resistance in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, but once that's done, I can move on, right? Yeah, if you mean moving on to the north to fight most of China, because remember, they are also all in the Allies. It really sucked I had to deal with this because, bro, Hitler is bringing the hammer down on Stalin. I don't even know how they've gotten this far. I mean, they are super overextended, but then I guess the Soviets are just as overextended. I do finally get a break as I push out of Vietnam. When I step on Chinese land, I flip the province to Communist China control, who has made the wise decision to not join the war against the rest of China. And because of that neutrality, I can advance further into China, and they can advance through this land to Vietnam. So I've basically created a DMZ. I spot that America is already going for the jugular against Japan, so I can't say Tojo has much longer for this world. Anyways, with Southeast Asia wrapped up, I could finally send Stalin some much needed soldiers. I also helped them out by building up their supply infrastructure and giving some much needed air support. Although the Luftwaffe outnumbers me, my heavy fighters can give the Kraut some problems and give my tactical bombers the cover they need to start bombing these Jerrys back for a change. There's no real grand objective in my first push from Gorky besides just generally pushing them back and causing as many German casualties as possible. Across the Russian steppes, I'm able to inflict a lot of damage on these invaders, and as my troops liberate the town of Penza, I see a way to inflict an even greater blow to the German army. Right in my line of sight, there is an open Erwin Rommel on the field, and soon we obliterate that Field HQ division, capturing the infamous general and sending him to a prison back in Siam. I captured a few minor generals along the way as well, but this one is like getting Moby Dick. Look at his stats, man. That's actually gonna hurt the Germans so much. I continue attacks all across the center, destroying many more German divisions. And right before I was about to capture George von Kuckler here, Japan announced its capitulation. Although they were my enemy, this is actually kind of bad for me, because with Japan gone, there is no common foe to keep the Chinese friendly with each other. So now, Communist China is in the fight versus the Allies. That means my DMZ doesn't work anymore, so I'm gonna have to fight in Southeast Asia again. Fortunately, I had a 15 division army as reserves in Australia, so I could respond to that incursion fairly quickly. It was mainly Chinese divisions we were facing out here, and they really couldn't fight me very well. With some air support, we were out there cutting their divisions to pieces, and don't worry, we were still pushing the Germans back in Russia. It wasn't easy to manage both of these fronts at the same time, but I was happy with the gains I was making. I checked my decision menu and noticed I could do something kind of funny. I could actually start a communist uprising in American-occupied Japan. I desperately needed some more friends in the area, so I went for it. I will say, going through all this heavy combat across the world is definitely having an effect, as you can see, but when I took the city of Nanning, I couldn't help but notice I got a lot of new recruits. So I immediately just tried to bum rush as many southern Chinese towns as possible to get more manpower. This worked really well, and I refilled my manpower pool. And before you ask, no, this isn't exploitation. I'm simply giving these peasants the means to liberate themselves. In November 1944, Australian troops liberated the city of Stalingrad and were rapidly collapsing Army Group South. The Chinese manpower was put into making 10 more infantry divisions, and while at first I was going to send them to China so we could continue the push there, the Japanese worker revolution soon began and they needed my help. Although they were the underdog, the rebels moved fast, sweeping over the southern parts of Japan before reinforcements could arrive. When my men arrived, there was a stalemate near the town of Shizuoka that I was determined to break. Although my air force wasn't enough to overcome the occupiers' air power, my boots on the ground were able to overrun their positions in Shizuoka. From there, I saw my best chance to end this war quickly. I blitzed out of the town to lock down the Tokyo area. Once that was done, there was nothing guarding my enemy's rear, so I rushed my men forward to secure the remaining cities under occupation, and eventually the Japanese People's Republic was triumphant across the Isles. I was so happy about doing this so fast, but when I took a step back, I'm not really sure it was worth it. This civil war also had the purgatory bug, and American Japan is still around, with a pretty big army, I'll say too. The JPR is stuck, and they can't even join our faction, but I guess better neutral than an enemy? At least the Eastern Front has better news for me. Nothing but W's over here. I turned my attention north and liberated Moscow from fascist tyranny. The German army was becoming a shadow of its former strength. Most of the front was literally wide open, and since there was nothing to stop me, I didn't stop. Soon, I met up with the Soviet soldiers pushing out from the Baltics and cut off even more German divisions around Novgorod. Germany was in complete free fall soon. No Eastern Front army, plus they're getting pushed in from Poland, the Benelux, Italy, and Spain. When the front lines across Germany start looking like this, it's time to find the cyanide. On January 12th, 1946, the world finally did it and destroyed the German Reich. There was a lot of land to divvy up amongst a bunch of nations that hated each other, so this peace deal took a while, and the results are, well, what you'd probably expect from a peace deal of this magnitude. The Soviets and I carved out a ton of puppets from the Axis in Central and Eastern Europe. As for France, well, I really don't know what happened here. Somehow, the Axis is still around. Hitler is alive and he's living in the middle of France along with Mussolini in the French Alps. There's also Denmark still hanging around them like an abused housewife. Like, come on, bro, just go. Unfortunately, this fight in Europe is far from being over. Not only are the democracies going to continue fighting against the workers' revolution, but from the east, China has been overrunning Siberia, and the Soviets have not been given much time to breathe. Literally, as they were liberating their country from German occupation, the Chinese were occupying their lands to the east. I mean, I could definitely push the Chinese back across Siberia with my Europe army, but in this Operation Unthinkable scenario, there are just way too many fronts for us, and the Soviets have been too crippled by their war with Germany. The march east isn't an easy one, but I am doing good damage to the Chinese. However, the progress I'm making is just too slow out here. Meanwhile, I'm watching the US and UK just swarm Western and Central Europe. When you're fighting the combined power of the US, UK, and China as Australia, you may need more than a half-strength Soviet Union at your side. But just because the road ahead is dark doesn't mean it's impassable. I will continue the good fight to liberate Siberia from their Chinese oppressors, along with dunking on their armies in Yunnan. With all these men I have overseas, you may be wondering how I'm defending Australia itself, and I won't lie, there's nobody home, but I don't need people home when I got the Dream Team defending my coastline. Unfortunately, the Dream Team can't be everywhere all at once, so the US does get a sizable invasion off around Darwin. I emergency deploy some men, and fortunately, they're able to hold their ground long enough to prevent this invasion from becoming game over. Obviously, I was laser focused on defending my homeland with that naval invasion, and the Allies took advantage of that by simultaneously launching a major offensive into Indochina. It was too late to contain this wildfire here. The main priority was saving any division I could and getting them to safety. I am gonna lose 4 divisions here, but you know what? This could have gone a lot worse. After narrowly avoiding that disaster, I think it's time to leave behind the disaster approaching in Russia. Looking at the surrender progress, once the Soviets lose either Moscow or Stalingrad again, it's gonna be wrapped. So while there still is a way out, I'm gonna send my boys on the next ship leaving Archangelsk. Back in Southeast Asia, the Allies continue to swarm the region. I set up a fallback line in front of Bangkok to hold our enemies back. And I start thinking that maybe once the troops from Russia arrive here, I could think about a counteroffensive to push these reactionaries back. It's a tough fight because not only do I have to hold up against the waves of troops attacking up here, I also have to deal with Allied naval invasions from behind around Malaysia. As I'm working on securing this area, I get the bad news on February 17th that the Soviet Union has capitulated. It's only me now, and despite being in the position I'm in, the US will not accept a surrender. They really want to tear me apart. Being the only focus of every nation's military certainly does make combat very interesting, especially with the fronts I'm fighting in. I'm constantly having to look out for AI shenanigans, because as you can see, they're always up to something. Surprisingly, the army from Russia makes it back mostly unscathed, and you know, looking at the situation, I don't think counterattacking is on the menu. It's more like playing fireman for all these naval invasions that keep happening. Since I'm cut off from most of the world's oil, I can't have my navy out and about patrolling, so I have to keep crushing naval invasions around Malaysia and Darwin, and soon they're even going to New Zealand. Since he's one of my last friends alive at this point, I'm not letting him down without a fight. Eventually, a proper peace deal happens where the Allies split up the Soviet Union and their puppet states. So all that's left in the common term is me and my puppets. I've kind of accepted my fate, and my goal now is just to take as many capitalists down with me on my way out. You may think that this Malaya and Siam front is kind of pointless, but think about all the troops being used here that are not being used for future invasions of Australia. For a while I was just focusing on micro, but then I see a notification for a failed raid to rescue a captured commander, and I can't help but laugh at where this raid happened. Yeah, they may have taken Kunming, but as a former prison colony, we Australians know a thing or two about building jails, and you're seeing the results. Or you know what? Maybe this breakout attempt is a metaphor for the Chinese trying to free their generals from PTSD and get them leading again. The next few months are more of the same. Allies trying to prod me from all sides to see what breaks, but despite everything, I still survive. But what I wasn't expecting was the liberalized Russian Federation being like, "Tag me in, coach." I guess they ran into me because they got themselves in a bit of trouble, but you know what? At this point, I only help workers who help themselves. I was forced out of Siam to further down the Malaysian peninsula, and the New Zealand front couldn't be safely described as needing significant improvement. I've been fighting for a long time, and eventually you just kind of reach a point where it's just like, I'm tired, boss. I mean, you can't say I haven't been doing much with all the casualties I've inflicted on the Allies, but all I can really do now is just sit on the defensive. I can barely run my Air Force or Navy since I have no access to oil, and there's no chance of me flipping this around. I think at this point, it's fair to just call it. I gave it the best I have, but that just wasn't good enough. Well, there you have it. That was my first look at Thunder at Our Gates. I really like the new HQ system and can't wait to see how it's used in mods or how it plays out in MP games. Capturing commanders is also just a really funny feature. I love it. As for the focus tree, well, Paradox is aware of the broken stuff here, so hopefully your version works properly, because I feel there is good potential for fun in this tree as long as you adopt my new policy with Paradox made focus trees of fast forwarding through almost every 70-day focus. Thanks again to Paradox for sponsoring this video. Remember, if you're interested in buying this DLC or any other HOI4 content, to get it through my link down below since it directly supports this channel with a cut of your purchase. Also, just letting you know guys, I have made a Kick channel that I plan on streaming on a lot over next week, so if you want to watch me live and talk to me while I record the next videos for this channel, make sure to follow me there. Shout out to the alumni generously supporting me on Patreon. Your extra support there is greatly appreciated. There will be more good content to come on this channel, so make sure to subscribe or follow me on Kick to get that content sooner. That's all for me today. Bye bye.